Time to talk alfalfa once again, and Don Miller joins us. Don, of course, is Director of Product Development with WAXX Seed. And Don, as we get into the Thanksgiving week, we're going to talk about something, we're not going to do anytime soon, and that's get a good alfalfa stand around here. But thinking ahead and making the proper preparations will make it a whole lot easier in the spring. What kind of guidance do you have for growers to get a good alfalfa stand? Where do we start?
Well, I think site selection is the main thing you really need to look at. Is that a piece of ground that is going to work for alfalfa? We need a well-drained soil. You know, alfalfa, they used to say it couldn't take wet feet, and that's because in those wet conditions, a lot of root diseases used to damage alfalfa. We have some genetic resistance to it now, but still a well-drained soil starts out pretty good.
And, of course, we've got to get that soil ready.
So we need a soil test, do a soil test, see what type of fertilizer you might need to put on the ground before next spring. If we need to do any lime, if the pH, check that pH. If it gets too acid, alfalfa doesn't like an acid soil, so if we get below a 6.5, we probably need to think about putting some lime on that ground.
This fall is the best way to do that,
too. It really is. Do things beforehand before we get to spring.
And, of course, getting that ground ready.
You know, I think a lot of time in stand establishment, people don't always pay as much attention to ground prep. And when I go out and look at fields where they've had a bad stand, one of the first things we think about is, did they have a good seed bed when they planted? And a good seed bed is, if you walk across that field, you don't want to sink any deeper than the soles of your shoe. That soft seed bed, you just don't get a good stand. Yeah,
and some of that sand, it's easy to get it deeper than that. And, of course, we want to make sure that the competition isn't too tough out there.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that we have a pre-plant herbicide, control those weeds. We don't want that competition to interfere with that stand establishment.
And nowadays it's so important because genetics have changed, that variety selection. You better start looking at the catalogs.
You know, I'm a plant breeder, and one of the things I really promote is we've come a long ways on improving alfalfa. So that variety selection for that piece of ground, make sure that you have the right fall dormancy where it's going to survive and grow in this environment. You want to not limit your production, or profit potential is what I say, because you want to get a good variety that's going to last 3 to 5 years and give you the production that you really need.
And, of course, we want to make sure that it's a resistant variety.
Yeah, with all the advances the last few years, we have varieties that can withstand some of the disease pressure that's out there in that field. So Phytophthora root rot, in the last few years, the Phantomyces, race 1, race 2, those are damping off diseases, and they can really damage that initial stand establishment. So getting a good variety with good pest resistance, that's really critical in getting that good stand establishment.
That's the way to do it. We asked the expert, and he told us, Dr. Don Miller, Don, Director of Product Development with WAXX.